I am very tired today, so I want to talk something light. Let's talk about symbolism, a little bit about ponchos too. But before I start the poncho talk, let me tell you about this day I was having a beer with my occultist friends. Yes, I have a group of friends who are students of the occult arts and Golden Dawn and Crowley and all that scary stuff. They're very nice people, and even I'm not being really part of their group, I'm not an occultist myself, they're kind enough to answer all of my many questions, because I'm just very curious about this universe. So when I ask things like, why does tarot have so many hidden penises? They don't laugh at me, they actually get very serious and they get together and like, yeah, let's formulate the most clear, concise reply we can. It's actually quite adorable as a group dynamic. So one day I was having a beer with these people, and you know how occultists go. Or maybe you don't know how occultists go, but this group in particular, this is how they interact. Somebody will say something in the lines of, Babylon is great, and then for half an hour they will just have a conversation in which people mostly agree about things, like, yes, this aspect is very interesting and cool. This other aspect is also very interesting and cool. Yeah, the first aspect though, even more interesting and more cool. Yeah, it's just how it goes. At least my friends are like that, like a Babylon fan club or something. On this specific day, people were talking about pantheons, like the Egyptian pantheon, and I remember somebody was asking me a question about the Afro-Brazilian orishas, because I know a little bit about that, and eventually I asked one of my questions. So, those two cultures, they have a god of music or a god of law, but those gods are very different. If you extrapolate, those symbols are very different. So my friends, these people I was talking to, they would draw gods and symbols and elements from all those different traditions, from all those pantheons. So how did they choose which god and which symbol to use in which situation? So they gave me a very interesting answer. So the pantheons, as we know, the Egyptian pantheon and the Greek gods and the Norse gods, they were not fixed. They were a snapshot. They were somebody trying to understand the zeitgeist, the minimal common denominator of the culture in that place at that time. But if you went to ancient Egypt and you navigated throughout the years, you would notice changes in those pantheons. So it is a living, breathing thing. So of course the Greeks would associate a god with wine, while the Vikings would associate the god with mead, because this is what they drank that place at that time. And if this culture of the gods had persisted, we would see the changes in that with the introduction of new kinds of drinks. We could have the god of pina coladas, why not? They said that even if this civilization followed this pantheon and this other followed this other pantheon, and they were indeed the minimal common denominator for that culture, so it fit a lot of people, the only really valid pantheon for you would be the pantheon you create yourself, because then it's custom made for your energy, for your needs. I'm not only talking about pantheons, but any symbolic system, it would have to be absolutely yours. So even if you draw from your culture, you would need to do the adaptations so that those gods or those symbols are just custom fit for you. And in this personal pantheon construction, you are allowed to use those ancient symbols that have been not only created thousands of years ago, but have been tamed and brewed and perfected for thousands and thousands of years of civilization, like water being connected to life, or the heartbeat being connected to emotion. You are allowed to choose one of those symbols and says, yes, you know what, a lot of people think that you fit, I also agree, so I'll grab you and I'll add you to my own personal roster. But you are allowed to also create your own unique symbols, even if those symbols challenge the already established symbols. Do you want to associate the sun with sadness? You can do that as long as it brings truth to you. Do you want to associate babies with death instead of life? A recent video game franchise did just that, and did it very well. Now, I've been talking about the philosophy on how to live your life, but let me transport this a little more into the writing world. Yes, you are allowed to use symbols that everybody knows, that everybody is already connected with. Tropes are nothing more than that. Yes, you're also allowed to create your own unique symbols. You need to pay a little more attention to them. You need to give them a little more dedication so that your readers really catch a glimpse of what they really mean. And yes, you are allowed to challenge the symbols that are already established. But then you need to be really careful. As writers, we rely so much on the symbols that people already know that if we want to do the exact opposite trail, then we need to be very clear about it. Imagine if your vampires are just really cuddly, great huggers. It might leave people very confused if you don't explain this correctly. Which brings me to ponchos. When I was a kid, I saw this cartoon in which a really cool character wore a poncho. My brain was forever changed. The association I made between ponchos and really amazing things is just so strong, I don't even feel I am worthy of wearing a bloody poncho. And yes, for that same reason, a character in my novel wears a poncho that he only obtained after a big test. He had to bend time and space to be worthy of that poncho. Now, this symbol, I remember where it comes from. I remember watching that one specific cartoon, seeing this one specific character and thinking, cool. But I wonder which associations I have formed to which symbols using the same process, but forgot about the context. Imagine that I watched some other cartoon and it made me associate flowers with pain, but I forgot about the cartoon, and now only the association remains. So I've been trying to pay more attention to those symbols. Perhaps I am using a bird as a symbol of freedom, just pretty universal. But perhaps I am using pipes as a symbol for transportation. That would only make sense if you played Super Mario. That was not my best example, but you get the idea. I'm tired. This concept also gives me the permission to be the Gardner Pantser writer that I am. I can close my eyes, let my mind flow, and whatever symbol shows up, I can put it on paper. Doesn't matter which symbol. And then later on, all I need to do is to be very careful that if my symbol is challenging an already existing symbol, I just need to make that clear. But I don't need to follow any sort of pantheon. I can make my own pantheon. So let's say I close my eyes and I see this association of people fighting for freedom, and my brain is telling me they're called the Armadillo Alliance. I don't need to rename my group the Eagle Alliance afterwards. I can keep my unique symbol and work on that. Actually, this opens a lot of interesting doors to talk about freedom in ways that normally is not talked about. Maybe in my universe, in my world building, freedom is associated with the protection against tyranny, like the hard skin plates of an armadillo. I can also close my eyes and somehow create the symbol of the dove of tyranny. And of course, most people associate dove with peace, but I can transform the dove into whatever I need for that story. I just need to be very careful. You just need to be clear. So I have a good example of that. Yesterday, I was watching my partner play The Witcher 3, and there was this side mission about tyromancy, which is divination by cheese. And to think about the symbol of cheese, it brings a lot of associations with it, but generally positive ones, and you know, I guess picnics in front of the Eiffel Tower and all that. But then you go into this side quest and you find a chamber in which is very clear that the cheese is being extracted from human body. So there's this machine and a withered corpse and the cheese being made out of the corpse. And suddenly, cheese is bloody terrifying. All you need to do is be mindful of your symbols. And if you are mindful, even cheese can be horrifying. Which symbols do you think are unique to you and your world building? Do you know where they come from in your own life, in your experience? I'm curious. Write down a comment here on YouTube or tweet me at Jorian Ramos. I'm just very curious. Thank you for your attention. That's the end of another episode. I'm sorry I was a little blah today. I'm just very exhausted. I hope it didn't sound very blah. And I guess I should go to the couch. See you next time. Ciao.